Welcome back to It's All Her, the podcast. I'm your host, Geordie Lucas. Today is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day, and we're going to hear part 2 of Rachael Casella's story. In part 1, Rachael bravely shared with us the heartbreaking story of losing her beautiful baby girl Mackenzie at just 7 months old to a genetic condition. Join us now where we talk about life after loss. Rachael talks about how Mackenzie has changed genetic screening in Australia and the hurdles she and her husband Jonny had to overcome to have another baby in their arms. But first, Rachael talks about the devastating reality of having to adjust to life without Mackenzie.
We scraped up the last of the money that we had and we flew to the busiest place in the world. We went to New York. We turned off our phones. We didn't tell anyone other than our family, I think, that we were going. We literally got up at 7 a.m. every morning and we walked the streets of New York till midnight. Just did that every day.
How long were you there for?
Just for a week. We just needed to not exist in our lives anymore. Everything from there was hard.
Yeah.
Back to work. Even I still remember I was so upset the first day I had to go to the grocery store because it was a normal everyday activity that I felt like was so wrong. I remember the first day I had to catch a bus and they may seem so insignificant, but they were all these firsts in a real normal life that I had to continue without her.
Yeah.
And everything crushed me, and it still does. Like, people think that you grieve in this really linear way and you just don't. Every time someone asks me, how many kids have you got? Is this your first baby? When I was pregnant, I'm getting a wax and someone sees my C-section scar. Oh, how many kids have you had?
Yeah.
It's just constant.
What do you say when people ask you those questions?
I always say I had a little girl and she passed away. Her name's Mackenzie. I say it because it's really exposing to say that, because you then have to deal with people's reaction. Not the biggest, but one of the biggest parts of grief is having to deal with everyone else's reactions, because they either give a nice reaction, but that's probably only about 10% of the time. The rest of the time people feel uncomfortable, so they try to make themselves feel better by ignoring it, not commenting, pretending you didn't say it. Like, it's just, but I refuse to hide my life because it's uncomfortable for someone else.
To try and, make someone else feel more comfortable for 15 seconds. Why should you have to?
And also, if I did that, not only, it would be for their comfort, but also I would spend the rest of the day feeling like the worst parent in the world because I had to pretend that my daughter didn't exist.
Yeah.
So you're in a lose-lose situation.
Losing a child, I can imagine it would either bring you closer together as a couple or it would drive you apart. And you and Jonny obviously stuck together and you've got your beautiful boy Isaac now. Did you have a conversation around, we need to stick together? How did your relationship fare in those weeks and months after her passing?
Really well. That's not common. Really sad. Very big credit of it goes to Jonny. I have an extraordinary husband. He cops it from me sometimes.
They all do.
My personality, and guys just don't seem to carry the same mental load. So
no, they don't.
But he pulled me aside very quickly, probably about 2 days after she was diagnosed, and he said, we cannot let this break us as well. That's the last thing Mackenzie would want. And can you imagine if we lost her and lost us? So we need to do this together. And that just became our key word whenever they were hard. But even if we were just sitting there on the couch staring at the television, every so often one of us would just say together and we would hold hands. We also established that when we were having those conversations about whether to put her on this trial drug that had come out, the non-resuscitation plan, but our plan was around when she was in hospital, we needed to make decisions. Was she going to be put on life support, intubated? Like, we had all these decisions, and we had to have a conversation about the fact that we needed to be each other's safe space. So we needed to be 100% honest with all of our thoughts, whether they were ugly or not. But we needed to make sure that each other was going to listen and not rise up in anger because the topic was so awful. And we were really, really lucky that we started our relationship. Like I said, I am quite a handful in my personality. Luckily, Jonny just goes with it. But, we had on the first date, because we were going to have to do long distance. We had conversations around our values.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased that we did, because we have the same values in life, and we were very lucky that both of us had, at every stage, we've made the same decision. And that's not always possible. Our relationship is stronger. I mean, we're not as carefree as we used to be. I'm currently going through trauma therapy, because especially after having Zach and going through everything we did to get him and Mackenzie, my trauma is really being triggered. Usually when one of us is down, the other one is able to hold them up. So
when did you feel ready to try for another baby?
We actually started trying just over a month after we lost Mackenzie. That was a combination of needing something desperate in the future to hold on to, because if we didn't have, like, people can go either way. I've spoken to people who have lost children, whether it's miscarriage, stillbirth, infant loss. You can go either way. You can really need some time, and they've got other people who really need to find a future, because without it, they're going to fall apart, and neither is the right or wrong.
No.
Yeah. We had hoped that we would get a sibling for Mackenzie actually while she was still with us. So for us, we had started to go down the path of IVF, where you could have embryos that were created like normal IVF, but you could actually, hopefully, if they were strong enough, get in a couple of cells to test whether they had the same condition. We'd started down that path, but the first thing you need to do is they actually have to create a test like specifically for you and for your condition and your family's genetics.
Yeah.
Which is completely mind-boggling that they can actually do it. But they use Jonny's, mine and Mackenzie's blood, and it takes 3 months to create the test. So we had started that before Mackenzie had fallen sick with her cold, but they happened to call us up, I think it was the end of November, so a month after we lost her, to say that the test was ready. And that felt like a punch in the guts.
Yeah.
Because even though it was a glimmer of hope, it just came at what would be, it just felt like an awful time. But we sat down and we looked at each other and we thought, well, we're not young. Like, we need to do this, because we want to have a couple more kids. Little did we know what was going to come for us, but Mackenzie had shown us the joy of being parents.
You've touched on that she had this genetic disease, SMA, which can actually be picked up with genetic screening, which isn't offered as routine to pregnant couples. Can you tell us a bit about, I guess, were you angry that people weren't offered and that you weren't offered this test, this screening?
Yeah, so we got mad at so many different levels, at so many different points of information that we give. People find it difficult to understand that what I constantly am saying, two things can be true at once.
Yeah.
So we were so thankful that Mackenzie had been given to us, and we would never trade our time with her. But watching your daughter struggle to breathe, you would never wish that on someone that you loved. So it's a combination of going, well, she didn't have to go through that, but at the same time, if she didn't, we wouldn't have got her. So you feel this,
it's very complex, isn't
feeling.
It? Yeah.
And it's not an easy thing, even though some people like to say what they think that they would have done if they were in your position. We found out that SMA is actually the number one genetic killer in babies under 2. And that just absolutely floored us. And we were fuming that we had not been told. Like I said, Mackenzie was so planned for. I made poor Jonny, before we had even started trying, go and get his sperm tested. We were prepared.
Yeah. You sound like my kind of girl.
I'm a researcher. So we did everything. We did the NIP test or the Harmony test at 10 weeks, which a lot of people confuse, because that is genetic testing, but you're actually only testing the baby's chromosome.
Yeah.
And you can actually have genetic conditions within those chromosomes. So it is complex. But we did that test and no, that is not the one. That's not the same thing. That's testing, like I said, chromosome conditions like Down syndrome. And we found out that SMA is the number one genetic killer in babies under 2, but no one knew about it.
Yeah.
You go to most of your GPs and they don't know about it, which again made us so angry. So initially we wanted to raise awareness about SMA. But when we were speaking to our neurologist, we said, could we have known about this And they said, yeah, actually, there's a saliva swab test. So literally a saliva swab that you put in your mouth and you send away. You can find out not just if you have a chance of SMA, but SMA is just one of thousands of genetic conditions out there. Like the most common that people know is cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
But there are literally thousands of genetic conditions. And then we started asking questions like, okay, well, if there's thousands out there, what are the chances that people carry them? So how it works is that we actually all have, on average, 3 to 5 genetic faults in our DNA.
Yeah.
But we have, because you get 2 sets of chromosomes and the genes are within those chromosomes, so it's a little bit complex, but we get 1 set from one parent and 1 set from the other. You can be a carrier of a genetic fault because you got a faulty gene from one parent, but you've got the healthy one from the other parent that acts and can take over the responsibility. So you're not affected by that genetic condition. But if both your parents carry that same fault and they've passed it on to you, you don't have a healthy working copy to take over the workload, and that's when you're affected. So both Jonny and I carry SMA, but we didn't know. So I passed on my faulty gene. Jonny passed on his faulty gene. Mackenzie got both faults and she didn't have that healthy one to counteract. So she was affected by it. But we carry SMA. Every single one of us carries a genetic condition. So you do as well.
Yeah. And then it's just based on, who
you get together
with. Yeah.
So this genetic carrier screening is a little saliva swab that you take and that your partner takes, or your donor if you're a same-sex couple, and they find out what the risk is of you two as a couple having a child that would be affected by a genetic condition.
Yeah.
So it's so simple, but they were only offering it to people that had a family history. But when we found out, we said, how many have a family history? And they said 4 out of 5 children born with a genetic condition have no family history. So they were only getting 1 out of 5, which is so
insane, isn't it?
Dangerous.
Yeah.
We have no family history. Like there's no SMA in our family. And we just couldn't comprehend it. And then if you look on the Genes for Genes Day website, 1 in 20 children born has a genetic condition or a birth defect. So when we were
a
finding
simple
out
test can pick this up, that's not.
Yeah. I was so angry, and initially that's what fueled us to go, well, this needs to change. Everyone needs to be offered this test. Not everyone has to take it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But everyone should be offered it, because we could save babies from going through horrible lives. But also there are a lot of genetic conditions these days that actually have treatments, and the earlier the baby gets the treatment, the better of life quality they have.
Yeah.
So for us, this was just a complete no-brainer, and we took it to the government and said, change.
Yeah. And you got a response.
Yeah. Jonny, actually, it's one of my favourite. We've done quite a bit of media over the years. And I was looking at the other day when I said I want to do something to make this change. This was a month after Mackenzie was diagnosed.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to write a letter. And Jonny said, no one's going to listen to you, don't bother. And I proved him wrong. But there was a media outlet that did like a news article, and the headline was something like, I often get proven wrong by my wife.
You need to frame that.
I was like, oh my gosh, Jonny's going, I was misquoted. I wrote a letter, and our family hand addressed that letter to 275, like every single member of parliament. Included a photo of Mackenzie. And I remember it was a photo of her wearing her first dress, because she wasn't really a girly girl. She didn't wear dresses. And we started getting responses, and most of them were positive. We did get a few really shit ones, and that was quite heartbreaking. But we got some really good ones, and we had some people stand up for Mackenzie. And then we found out that there was this incredible medical team that were advocating for the same thing we were.
Yeah.
And then we got contacted by Greg Hunt, who's the federal health minister, and is one of the most incredible people that I've ever met. As much as people like to hang stuff on politicians. I have so much time for him. My family owe him our daughter's legacy. And he was so receptive to genetics and to knowing the fact that it wasn't just SMA, there was all these conditions that Australians' lives could be made better for.
Yeah.
And we started campaigning in June. She was diagnosed in May. We started campaigning in June.
Yeah.
We lost her in October. We met Greg Hunt for the first time in November. And then by May the next year, we were invited down. We'd had a couple more meetings with Greg Hunt before then. And then in May 2018, we were invited down to Canberra for the budget. And we had a private meeting with him before the budget was announced that the government was giving $500 million towards a 10-year genomics project.
Wow.
The first research project was going to be called Mackenzie's Mission, and it was $20 million into finding how we could bring that saliva swab to every single Australian that wanted it for free.
I've just gotten goosebumps. What was that moment like for you, hearing that this was going to be Mackenzie's legacy?
Everything.
Yeah.
Like, the thing that people get really worried about with one of the many when it comes to child loss is that, you know, their baby was only here for such a short amount of time, and that's if they were here, you know, if they're stillborn, or there's so many different layers to feeling like people were going to forget your child.
Yeah.
And so to know that Mackenzie wasn't forgotten, she was here for a reason. She was changing the world, but also that all these babies in the future were going to have either a better life, or these families weren't going to grieve, and healthy babies were going to be born because of her. I remember we were sitting in the cafeteria at Parliament House, and it was Jonny and I and parents, and those amazing medical professionals I was telling you about ended up becoming the lead investigators of Mackenzie's mission. And we were all sitting around in the cafeteria and we were crying.
No.
It was incredible.
Yeah. What an amazing way to honour her as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's taken me a lot of time, a bit of therapy. I've never been a woo-woo type of person, but leaning towards kinesiology and souls, and now I know that she was supposed to be here for that. I used to hate it when people would say everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
That was so dismissive to what we were going through, but she was supposed to be here for a reason.
Yeah. Can we talk a bit about your beautiful boy? And I reached out to you after we were on the same Zoom event for Owlet, and you had posted a comment in there saying that you'd lost beautiful Mackenzie, and that this Owlet had given you a lot of peace of mind and had helped your anxiety with Isaac's sleeping. Can you tell us a bit more about the anxiety that you feel with him after losing Mackenzie?
I've had a really bad week with it.
Yeah.
It's ebbs and flows, but after Mackenzie, we went through 9 rounds of IVF to get Isaac. Those 9 rounds of IVF were brutal. We got pregnant another 2 times, and we had to terminate both pregnancies in the second trimester due to illness. So when I was pregnant with Zach, there was a lot of, especially for Jonny, he was like, he could not connect with Zach at all because he believed that something was going to go wrong. It's this sense of impending doom of we've lost so much, so why is this different? People have asked me, when did you know that you had hope again in the future? And it was the moment that Zach was born, and I saw him breathe. And I was like, oh my God, he's actually here. But there is this constant fear that something else is going to happen.
Yeah. And
I remember telling Jonny about the Owlet, and he was thinking, I'm never going to use that. What a privileged piece of equipment type of thing. But then he was sitting in the hospital watching Zach's chest rise and fall, and he's like, I can't do this. This is too much. So it means that we can actually sleep, because I'm terrified that we're going to be, we've been this sad story for so long. Like we're just going to be, I just constantly see news headlines, parents who've lost 3 children, have lost their 4th. SIDS. At the moment, I've just had the last week of pure panic because I went to mother's group, and you know how, according to my Instagram, every family feels like this, even ones that haven't lost a
I've
baby.
seen your post on this. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just this, you know, Zach's doing this, but he's not doing that, but that baby's doing this. And it's this comparison. And for the last few days, Jonny and I have been terrified that, you know, this poor little boy who is just having this lovely time just chilling is suddenly on this army regiment routine, because I'm like, we have to do rolling practice and we have to do feeding practice and we have to do sitting practice. And, you know, it's really hard to sort of pull myself out of that and go, don't let this affect Zach's life. Let him have his life, find the balance. And it's just this constant swirling of anxiety, but then not wanting it to be put on him because he needs to be his own person, but then he also needs to know about Mackenzie. And it's just this swirling, it's like feeling like you're in a whirlpool constantly. And I really thought that I had my head on a swivel, and every single noise was making me completely anxious when he was first born. Then for the next month or two, because we were in lockdown at home, I was much better. And then being able to see people in that comparison just sent me. So I think it's just an ongoing.
Yeah. So you're so open and honest with your online community. And I have to say, my mum is very invested in you. In your life. She messaged me when Isaac was born, and
honestly, having people actually care about our life is just the biggest gift that anyone can give me. Like, people might send presents and that, and they're so welcome, but even just listening is just
Was it a conscious choice to share with people? Like, was that part of you thinking this is another way to honor Mackenzie, is to share and to spread the message?
Not initially. I only had a private Facebook because Jonny and I are police officers. It is very unusual for people who are police officers to have a public profile. We're not supposed to do that for, you know, security reasons, but also most police don't want to. Like, I remember when I first started to do media, I was asking them not to put my surname in, but then that kind of just didn't work. And I realized very early on that in order to get people's attention to create change, you actually have to have a story associated with it. It's hard to grab people's time if you're just talking statistics.
Yeah.
But I started my Instagram because it's awful, but the people who were around me when Mackenzie was diagnosed and when we lost her, you know, a lot of them didn't know, like a lot of the population didn't know how to respond. And initially we kind of got some, you know, support, I guess, but very quickly it dropped off. And it was like, okay, the funeral's done. That's it. And so I still wanted to talk about my daughter.
Yeah.
But I was doing it on Facebook because I needed an outlet. And I just wasn't getting responses. And I was like, I just feel like I'm burdening these people who didn't choose to witness this. And it was a really shit feeling. And so I went, I'm just going to do it in my own space where no one has to follow me, but it's my own little journal.
Yeah.
And so I started doing it on Instagram, and I had like 50 followers, and they were just my friends. And slowly it grew, and it was completely unexpected. But I was doing it as a cathartic thing for me, and also because I wanted to raise awareness, but that was more any media I did. But then it kind of grew and grew. And there was definitely a point where I went, okay, well, this is where I feel like I fit in the world, which is education around not just genetics, but IVF, reproductive health. I feel really passionate about this space. Jonny and I have had conversations. I'm very lucky that he is open as well, and he's passionate about education too. He just sort of prefers for me to do more of it, I guess, from the women's side. But we have had conversations, especially when it comes to sharing our terminations for medical reasons. Especially when it came to IVF, we did a lot of our rounds where we didn't share the results until after we knew it and had processed it, whereas with Isaac, we actually shared everything in real time, and that was not at all for attention.
Mm.
It was purely because everyone knew we were always doing IVF anyway.
Mm.
It was more energy to hide to when people were saying, where are you up to? It was more energy to lie to them. So I just didn't have it in me. So I just went, I'm just going to share it.
I mean, you obviously would never take comfort in someone else's suffering, but to know, to have that connection with other parents who have gone through similar situations, that you can sort of talk with someone who knows how you're feeling.
Absolutely. Like I know that there are so many people who came before me. I am not the only person who has lost a child. I am not the only person who's gone through half of the stuff that we've gone through. But I really didn't find anything 4 or 5 years ago when Mackenzie was first diagnosed. I really didn't find a space, and it was all on little private hidden Facebook groups. And I didn't really feel at the time like I had someone who had gone through it before me, even though I know that there was plenty.
Yeah.
I hate saying that because maybe there was, and I just didn't find it. And what I've said is so disrespectful, but I didn't feel like there was anything. So I take a lot of comfort in being able to be that for other people. Now I have people contact me and they've gone through it themselves, or they're going through it, or they ask for advice. I get all sorts of messages. I love the ones where people comment to say, my friend's going through this, how can I help? Because that's a huge area for me, because I feel like society just doesn't know how to deal with child loss. So I love it when people take the time to ask what they can do. Love hearing from so I say normal mothers, but ones that haven't gone through loss, who say, I love following your story. It makes me be a better mum and hug my children closer.
Yeah.
Because I also hate the idea that the only people who are paying attention to this space are ones that have gone through it.
And you posted recently that you're going to embark on your journey for a third bubby. So what does that process involve?
So I had a laparoscopy because, like I said, we did 9 rounds of IVF, we did multiple transfers. I got deep vein thrombosis. I then got endometriosis stage 4, which we think was from the IVF. So I've been
had a lot thrown at you.
A lot. And so I have a laparoscopy to get rid of any endo that's come back in a few weeks. That comes with its own challenges, because I'm really stressed at the moment, because I'm trying to get Zach to take a bottle. Because of COVID, the hospital won't let me bring Zach into the hospital. Oh my God. I've got to have a surgery, but I've got a breastfed baby who can't come into the hospital. So that's just a whole other stressful issue. We have one embryo that is tested, but that is not straightforward. So a normal healthy embryo has about a 45 to 50% successful transfer to full-term pregnancy rate. Yeah. This embryo is an SMA carrier like us and like Zach, but it's got mosaicism on 2 chromosomes, which is like abnormal cells. Okay. And either the healthy cells could take over and it will be a healthy baby, or the abnormal will take over and it won't. So this embryo is being given basically a 20 to 25% chance. So we transfer that. Yeah. And if that doesn't work, we do another round of IVF, but we don't have any more money to do what we did to get Zach. Yeah. Because IVF is expensive. Yeah, it's really expensive, but it was an added cost for the genetic testing. But another amazing Greg Hunt move from November, the genetic testing of embryos for inherited genetic conditions is now free. So that's amazing. But it's still expensive. And also one of the babies that we had to terminate was actually a healthy IVF baby, but they can only give you a percent accuracy, and it was 95% healthy for a chromosome condition. When we were almost halfway through our pregnancy, we found out that he was not healthy. So Jonny lost a lot of confidence.
It's a controversial topic, but the terminations for medical reasons that we had with Bella and Leo, that's something that when I put on my Instagram, I get one of the biggest responses, because so many people have actually gone down that path, but they have been too scared by society to actually admit it, which is devastating. But then they also feel like they aren't allowed to celebrate or think about Infant Loss Awareness Week month or the day, or they're not able to talk about, Bereaved Mother's Day. It's like they feel like they're not allowed to because they made the decision, even though it was not even a decision that it's not even a decision when you're being told your child's got a terminal illness.
Yeah.
Basically, we have to take it day by day. We've agreed to that one embryo transfer and one round of IVF, and then because it's a balance between not being fearful and pushing through that fear to get what you want, but also not damage yourself too much. A lot of people would say it's so soon after Zach and enjoy your time with him, and I totally get it. I wish I could just sit back, but I'm 38 and Johnny's 42, and it took us 4 years almost to get Zach, so we really don't have time.
So how, going forward, and obviously we hope that little Zach gets a brother or sister, how are you going to talk to Zach about his sister?
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions around this, just in the fact that it's so important to us that she is his sister, that she is his big sister, and that she's in his life. But we also need to make sure that because she does have this big legacy and she does have this big impact on our lives and those around us, that we also don't want her to overshadow him. So it's quite a balancing act. We already talk about her. So as I said, Johnny's a very singy, dancey kind of guy. So he's constantly making up songs. And so we sing songs that have got her in it. We say good morning and good night to her. When I read his nighttime book to him, I say, and good night, Kenzie. When he's old enough, each night my plan is to say good night by finding a star in the sky. Good night too, and showing videos when he's old enough, and like creating a book, because my aim is, it's such a small aim but such a big aim, is that when he's at school and he's doing some kind of family project or he's drawing a picture of his family, I'd really love it if he drew Mackenzie there. And when someone said, who's that, he'd just so simply and casually say, that's Mackenzie. That's just my sister. I just want her to be his sister.
Yeah. How can we support Mackenzie's mission?
We are really lucky in that. So we're 2 years into the 3 years research project for Mackenzie's mission. So, it's happening. The aim is, the hope is that in a year's time, the test will be rolled out for everyone. At the moment, it's still a research project, so it has to be offered to you by specific medical professionals who are signed on as recruiters.
Yeah.
So we don't need money. The research project is underway. What we need is people to take the time to educate themselves and even educate their GPs. So where the guidelines used to be that only people with a family history are offered genetic carrier screening, we've now got those guidelines changed to say that every prospective parent should be offered genetic carrier screening for at least the top 3 genetic conditions, which is cystic fibrosis, Fragile X, and spinal muscular atrophy. But unfortunately, a lot of medical professionals don't realise that guideline has changed, and they still think it's based on family history. So the best thing that you could do is either come and follow me and learn about it, so you can either get it yourself if you're planning a family. Even if you've already had a baby, I unfortunately do know couples that, because it's not 100% guarantee on each child, so they can have 1 or 2 healthy children and then their 3rd or their 4th or their 2nd is affected. So if you're planning a baby, get genetic carrier screening, look on the Mackenzie's Mission webpage for the next year until it's offered to everyone. If you want to get it yourself, look up Eugene or Prepare, and I have them on my website, which is mylifeoflove.com, or my Instagram, So really it's just about education.
Yeah.
And just taking the time to learn it. That's the biggest thing that you can do.
And I'll put all those links in the show notes as well. Rachael, thank you so much for coming on and being so open in sharing your story. And just personally, I just want to say you are an incredible mum to two beautiful babies, and Mackenzie is so proud of you.
Thank you so, so much for caring, for taking the time. It's just, like I said, the biggest gift that you could give me.
Thank you so much for listening to this very special episode of It's All Her. I would like to dedicate these 2 episodes to Mackenzie Casella and all the babies who are so tragically no longer with us.